Okay, kids. So we got a Dr. Z Maz Senior amp here. Apparently it was working, and then somebody plugged it into a power conditioner and it blew a fuse, and they changed a fuse and it still doesn't work. They said it acts like it doesn't come off a standby, which does sound like a high voltage fuse to me, but there could be some other things. I was going to test the tubes, and when I pulled the rectifier tube out, which is 5AR4, GZ34, that one, one of the pins from the tube socket came with it, so we'll put that back. And it wasn't soldered in anything, and even though that's an octal tube, you only use 4 pins. So I'm going to go through it. I'm going to test the tubes on this and see if there's anything interesting to report, and then we'll pull the chassis and have a look. Okay, so our power tubes all tested at 5, except for one that tested as 4, which is worn out according to our tester. Let's compare it to a healthy tube. Yeah, so here's a typical 6BQ5 EL84, testing at about an 8. So yeah, this is a used tube, but I knew it was healthy, so yeah, we're gonna need power tubes. Okay, so what's interesting is these tubes, which are labeled as Ruby, appear to be very similar to the, it looks like 6N14N, which we would refer to as 6P14P Russian military tubes, and that orange tester tends to read those low even when they're brand new. And so I brought it over to my ICO, and the ICO seems to like these things just fine. So I'm not gonna, I think they still have plenty of life in them. Okay, kids, check this out. I was checking out this rectifier tube. I don't know, does this stupid camera have a red light on it, or it's like ICO red light? Look in there, it's a double, this is a double diode. I only see light on the one of the two, and this side ain't got no emission whatsoever. So if I were to switch to test the other half of the tube, should test good. But if I switch it over to test, the second half of the tube, she tests nothing. And again, I should have a glowing filament on both sides of the tube, and I can see it from the top and the bottom of this half, but I don't see it at all on this half. I think we got a bad rectifier tube. This is my rectifier tube out of the box. It's got 2 glowing sides, and on the one triode, she's good. And we switch to the other diode, excuse me, we're testing diodes here, it's a rectifier tube, is good. So rectifier tube would explain why this amp wasn't getting good high voltage. Cool. Okay, so I did drop the chassis, even though I was suspicious I might not have to. They said they changed the fuse. It looked like they put too big of a fuse in there, so took care of that. Got a slow blow fuse that belongs in an amp like this. Just looking through, doing a quick inspection. I'm not seeing anything else fishy here. Nothing looks burn up. We'll check a couple of the resistors. If I have to get under there, there's some resistors hiding under there, but again, nothing looks burnt or smoked. Everything looks pretty cherry. And if the rectifier tube decided to take a dump, then that would cause the fuse to go kaboom, because it's drawing a bunch of current, because it's messed up. Okay, I'm tired. Yeah, I'm tired, but we're fine. So I'm going to stick the tubes in and bring it up on the Variac, and hopefully nothing bad happens. So yeah, I brought it up on the Variac. She be working again, and there's no other visual damage to this, so my guess is whatever managed to get its goat. The rectifier tube went out, and then with half a rectifier tube that would cause some major imbalance and thus pop the fuse. So yeah, so we'll get you know, we'll double check the fuses, make sure everything's kosher on both of them. There's a high voltage and a low voltage. There's a 3 amp fuse up top and a half amp fuse at the bottom. Okay kids, now granted, before we powered it back up I had already gotten that figured out. The fuse that they had up here, that's the 3 amp factory fuse. That's the one coming off the power cord. This is supposed to be a half amp fuse for the high voltage. I'm assuming it's the high voltage. I mean, it's logically what it would be. 500 milliamps, half an amp. And there was something significantly thicker and fatter in there, and it was burnt out. Now, I don't know if that was some kind of weird slow blow or something like that, but half amp fuses usually don't have that thick of a wire. But I'm not going to argue it. But anyway, I think we're back in business here. You can tell on these amps that, you know, somebody took a couple of lessons here. You can see we have a soldered bus bar there for ground, which is fine. And this is an aluminum chassis, which is a very Ken Fisher kind of thing. Again, I'm not arguing themes and who, you know, everybody's got their idea, and, you know, people look at Ken Fisher as royalty as well as Howard Alexander Dumble, you know, they're royalty, and we're going to do things similar to what they did. But you know, I don't know. I've had success with my amps doing them the way I want to do them, and to each their own. But this is a cool amp and certainly represents some good craftsmanship. That's a very, very surfy reverb. Sounds like something I would make. Oh, it's turned up all the way. That explains why it's extra surfy. Cool. So it's working good. And give it some drive and see if it likes to crunch a little bit. Oh yeah. It's going to be too much if I don't cut the master volume down. Granted, I would have to fiddle around with it to figure out what sounds good, because I haven't owned or played one of these before. But as far as like obvious things that could be wrong, it, you know, crackling, popping, and the circuit not working or something, it's not doing any of that stuff anymore. So we're fixed. Power problem turned out to be the rectifier tube. We needed a rectifier tube and a fuse, and now it works. Hooray! Thanks for watching. Have a great day.